For my current topic presentation, I chose to present on COVID-19 and its impact on food safety. So a little bit of background on COVID-19. It is caused by the virus SARS-CoV-2. The main form of transmission for COVID-19 is respiratory droplets, which come from sneezing, coughing, talking, and other things like that. And the main form of transmission is therefore person-to-person contact for the food industry. It is still not fully known whether the virus can live on food and food packaging, and if it can, for how long, but my presentation will get into what is known about its impact. The impact on quality and safety of food production. So because when coronavirus first came to light, there was not much known about its impact on food safety, professionals looked to previous research from similar viruses such as the first SARS virus, the MERS virus, and other coronaviruses, and they were studied to risk assess SARS-CoV-2 and its effect on food safety. The studies determined that the virus has little to no risk to food safety, and it is not considered a foodborne disease. They concluded that the risk of getting COVID-19 from food or its packaging is very low. COVID-19 has no direct impact on quality or safety of food production. Its biggest impact on food production is transmission between workers at different locations that produce, package, and sell food products. They also found that SARS-CoV-2 can survive on hard surfaces such as stainless steel for up to 3 days, so regulations have to be put into place to combat that. People can become infected if food is handled without the proper precautions in place, so regulations are in place for that as well. And COVID-19 has caused major disruptions in the global food chain, and that is the biggest impact on food production that it has. Public and consumer views. So a study done found that with the risk of COVID-19, consumers actually purchase more than before. And this shows that consumers are more worried about the impacts of factories and manufacturers shutting down, and not necessarily extremely worried about the safety of products themselves. However, the viewpoint is different for people who have been socially or economically impacted because there have been numerous socioeconomic impacts on the food industry, such as those who have lost a job, and they are more likely to have a pessimistic view and not purchase as much. In my experience, only initially in December and early January did it seem like COVID-19 could possibly pose a risk to food safety, but pretty early in 2020, professionals made it clear that the disease was mainly transmitted from person to person. So everyone in my family and people I talked to were never really worried about it. So the current regulations in place are kind of on top of regulations that are already in place at different facilities because farms and manufacturers already have hygiene practices in place, but obviously additional regulations are needed to protect both workers and consumers. These regulations include maintaining 6 feet from other workers if possible, wearing a face mask at all times, washing hands frequently, avoiding touching your face, and staying home if you are sick. Workplaces are also required to provide easy access to hand washing stations with soap and water, as well as sanitizer or sanitizing wipes. Frequently touched objects such as doorknobs are also required to be sanitized and disinfected regularly. So the steps in place if an employee tests positive, it depends on the area you are and the requirements of your health department, but this is just a basic outline of what is required to happen. So the infected employee who tested positive must begin a 2-week quarantine, and again, the time for this may vary. The employee must notify the company, and the company must immediately notify the local health department so they can begin contact tracing and notifying the people that they need to notify. The areas where that employee worked must be thoroughly cleaned and disinfected, and the person performing that job must wear PPE such as masks and gloves, and the employer must also inform the other coworkers that they have been exposed, and they must also quarantine, again, depending on what the health department in that area requires. The time could be very different. So, the major disadvantage of COVID-19 on food safety is disruption to the global food chain. So this happens when an employee is contagious but without symptoms, they can possibly spread COVID-19 to almost everyone at the facility they work. This could cause the facility to completely shut down for weeks at a time. This sets off a chain reaction and affects many other facilities that may depend on products that that facility creates. So, this could leave many shelves for certain products empty in grocery stores. And factories could also possibly go out of business or even shut down due to the pandemic, depending on their financial state before this all happened. Not only does this impact the workers, but it also impacts the consumers who may be food insecure and depend on certain products. There are obviously not many clear advantages of COVID 19 on food safety, but the ones I could come up with are in some cases, farms and manufacturers might practice better personal hygiene and cleaning precautions than before the pandemic. And also, the future will probably continue to have these cleaning precautions, which will therefore cause less risk of foodborne illnesses, food poisoning, and other things that often come from food. And then a final advantage I thought of was because food insecurity was brought to light in the pandemic and the people who were struggling kind of struggled more, this could possibly help them in the future because programs can be put into place to help those people who are in need and food insecure. To conclude, although COVID 19 isn't a direct threat to food safety, there are many indirect effects that have a big impact. Most impactful is the disruption to the global food chain, which, as I said, could cause factories to shut down, possibly go out of business. Many people might lose their job, and food insecurities and food deserts are brought to light because of this. COVID 19 doesn't have a major impact on food safety and quality, but it is still extremely important to keep in mind, especially for those who are most vulnerable when it comes to food. And then these are my references. Thank you.